My name is Trey or Genjo, and recording the talk, and it'll be put up on Great Tree Zen Women's Temple YouTube page probably by the end of the week. And I'll just say a few words about the spirit and practice of Dana before Anne introduces Reverend Daitetsu, and then continue from there. So in Buddhism, when practitioners share their understanding of the teachings and practice, it is offered freely as a practice of dana paramita. Dana is a Pali word that means generosity or to give freely, and this practice is done without expectation of getting something in return. This is the spirit of speaking about the Dharma. Other ways to practice dana are to offer support to those who share the teachings, to support places of spiritual practice, and to give without judgment of expectation when opportunities arise. Those who share the teachings at Great Tree do so on a dana basis. Please support their practice by giving what you can. You can do so either directly or through Great Tree, and we will pass it on to them. And in the chat, you'll find the two links there are one is the donation page for Dharma Field, and the other is the donation page for Great Tree. And please, if you donate, send an email to info@greattreetemple.org specifying that the Dana is connected to this talk this morning. And Reverend Daitetsu, if there's another form you'd like to receive donations, please let us know and we can drop a link or email or address in the chat. Thank you.
Anne, you're muted.
You muted, Anne.
Oh, another technological challenge. I'd now like to welcome and begin introducing Reverend Daitetsu Norm Randolph, who is a senior teacher at Dharma Field Zen Center in Minneapolis. He was born in San Francisco in 1943, graduated from UC Berkeley with a psychology degree, and worked in an Air Force psychiatric clinic. In 1969, he met Dainin Katagiri Roshi in San Francisco and moved to Minneapolis when Katagiri Roshi went there in 1972. He was ordained in 1978 and received Dharma Transmission in 1989. And now Tejo would like to add a few words of introduction for her Dharma brother.
I'm so grateful to Norm for coming this morning. Norm was one of the first people that Katagiri Roshi ordained. So he's my Dharma brother, but he's like my big Dharma brother, my big brother. One of my favorite stories, and I don't know if this is accurate or not, Norm, so you might have to correct me, but is that when Katagiri Roshi left San Francisco Zen Center to move to Minnesota, he told a lot of people, asked him if they could come, said that they wanted to move to Minnesota, and he said, and Roshi said, no, you should stay here. But my understanding is that Norm decided not to ask him. He just did it. I love that. So anyway, I don't know anyone who doesn't love Norm, and I sure do. And so I'm really grateful that you came, Norm. Thank you.
Thank you, Tejo.
Now it's your turn.
My turn now? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Well, thank you, Tejo. And I have many wonderful memories of Tejo from our time together studying with Katagiri Roshi in Minneapolis, and very wonderful person. So anyway, thank you for inviting me to give a talk here. I was going to talk on the life of Buddha. And so I'll just say some things about Buddha. And I think I have till 10 o'clock or something like that. Is that right? Okay. Well, I think I can pack it all in that amount of time. Well, Buddha was born about 2,500 years ago in northern India. And his given name was Siddhartha, and his family name was Gautama. It was after his awakening, after his enlightenment experience, that he was called the Buddha. But when he was growing up, he was called Siddhartha Gautama. And his mom died shortly after he was born, and he was raised by his stepmom. And his father was a powerful clan ruler, and Siddhartha was raised with the expectation that he would eventually take over and become clan ruler when he got old enough to do so. And so Siddhartha was educated with that in mind. So he received a very thorough education that would enable him to govern the clan. And he also received extensive training in the martial arts, and sometimes clan rulers were expected to lead their troops into battle in battling against other clans. So he was very much familiar with martial arts. From a very early age, Siddhartha showed himself to be very sensitive to the suffering that he saw in the world. He was very much concerned about when he'd see little animals that had been injured, and he would try to take care of them. Also, one time he was watching the spring planting going on. There was a festival that they had in the kingdom, and it's usually regarded as a very joyous event in which the fields were being plowed, and they're having ceremonies to celebrate the planting and the sowing of the fields. And most people consider this a very joyful experience, or a very joyful event. But Siddhartha it was very upsetting to him, because as the fields were being plowed, he saw all the little animals that lived in the fields being destroyed, having their homes destroyed, and it very much upset him. And so he was from a very early age, from early childhood on, he had a very deep sensitivity to the suffering that he saw in the world. And his father was concerned about this. His father was worried that Siddhartha's sensitivity to the suffering that he saw in the world would interfere with his ability to be a successful clan leader, because sometimes clan leaders had to make hard decisions and do things that are involved in bringing about suffering for others. And his father was worried that Siddhartha wouldn't be able to carry out his duties as clan leader. And so what his father tried to do was to shelter Siddhartha from the unpleasant aspects of life. He tried to provide lots of pleasurable activities for him to be involved in, kind of to distract him from his tendency to brood about the suffering that he saw in the world. And so Siddhartha was kind of sheltered from the suffering of the world, and also was given many pleasurable opportunities to enjoy himself. Also, Siddhartha was a very intelligent person, had a wonderful personality, very charming and good looking and athletic. And people very much liked him, and were looking forward to the day when he would take over as clan ruler. And so he seemed to have very favorable circumstances. He was sheltered from a lot of the suffering of life, and had many pleasurable activities to be involved in. and was very much liked by the people in the kingdom. So he seemed to have very favorable circumstances, but his concern about suffering of others was very deeply rooted. And as he grew older, more and more he noticed the suffering in the world, both with people and animals and plants. And he wanted to get to the bottom of this suffering and try and understand it. And this was very deeply rooted within him. And finally, he decided that he couldn't take over as the clan ruler, and that he needed to try and get to the bottom of this suffering and try and resolve the questions that he had about suffering and to try to deeply understand it. So at the age of 29, Siddhartha left the palace where he had been living with his father and his family. And he went on to become a homeless mendicant who lived by begging his food, and who tried to study with teachers who could teach him about the truth, and teachers who could help him to resolve the questions that he had about suffering. So he studied with some of the best teachers of his time, and he very quickly mastered their meditation techniques and mastered their philosophies. He proved to be very quick learner, and the teachers that he studied with were very impressed with him and wanted to. Several of them wanted to make him their successors because he had learned their teaching so quickly. But Siddhartha wasn't happy with what he'd learned. He didn't feel that he'd resolved the questions that he had about suffering, or that he sufficiently understood the suffering that he saw in the world. And so Siddhartha decided that he would leave these teachers, and the next thing that he practiced was the practice of asceticism. And asceticism is a program of self-denial and self-torture in which you intentionally try to make things hard on yourself, trying to make it so that you could purify your body and mind in such a way as to be able to awaken to the truth and realize and resolve the questions about suffering. So Siddhartha practiced asceticism very diligently, eating very small amounts of food, going without sleep, making things difficult for himself, in the hopes that this would purify his life enough so that he could wake up and understand the suffering that he saw in the world and resolve his questions about it. So he practiced very diligently, so diligently, in fact, that he almost killed himself. He had passed out at the side of the road from weakness, physical weakness, because of his ascetic practices. But fortunately, a milkmaid came along and she restored him to health. She gave him cereal and milk, and with her helping him and providing him with nourishment and help, he was able to be restored to health. And when he was restored to health, he decided that asceticism was not the way to go. He realized that was a completely useless practice. So what Buddha did, or what Siddhartha did after that, was on his own. He came upon the practice of awareness, to hear now experience. Just being aware in all circumstances, moment by moment, being aware here and now in all circumstances. He tried to carry out this practice. he also did a lot of Zazen. Zazen is the most stable and peaceful form of this practice. So he very diligently carried out this practice of being aware here and now, both in his daily activities and also in the Zazen that he did. The Zazen being the upright cross-leg posture that Tejo has taught you. So it was in practicing Zazen that he had his great awakening experience. Before that, lots of things came up out of his own mind. He experienced all kinds of things that just came up out of his own mind. He experienced some very beautiful and seductive visions, and he also experienced some very frightening, terrifying visions. But Siddhartha didn't get caught by it. He just let these experiences come and let them go, and continued to be aware here and now. He continued to carry on with that practice of here now awareness, and without getting caught up in all the phenomena that appeared, both from his physical experiences and from his mental experiences. And so it was while he was practicing in Zazen that he had a very great awakening experience, great experience of enlightenment. And in this experience, he realized that his true nature was the Buddha nature. He realized that his true life, true self, true nature was a reality of awareness or awakeness, a subjectless, objectless awareness and awakeness. And this is the reality that is directly experienced here and now. All of us are experiencing this. It's just that we don't usually realize what our actual experience is. The Buddha realized that his true life, his true self, his true nature was this directly experienced here now reality of awareness and awakeness. This was also, he realized the true life, the true self, the true nature of all beings. And it became evident that all the seemingly separate beings that he encountered were manifestations of this true life, true self, true nature that is being directly experienced here and now. So this true life, this true self of Buddha was, this is also, as I said, the life of the true life, true self of each seemingly separate being, and that each seemingly separate being is a manifestation of it. And this true life, this true self, true nature is the life of all beings. This is our true life. And this true life, true self, true nature as a reality of wholeness, totality, universal reality. It's the life of all beings. Our life is the life of all beings. This became evident to him, to Siddhartha, in his awakening experience. It didn't become evident to him in the form of some idea that he could grasp. It became evident in his actual direct experience. And it was, this is what he realized directly, not something that he conceptually figured out or some idea that he got. He realized this directly. So for the next 45 years, this experience happened to him when he was 35. So for the next 45 years, until his death at the age of 80, Buddha, he was called Buddha after his awakening, which means the awakened one. Buddha tried to help his followers to eventually realize who they truly are and to live as they truly are. He wanted to help his followers to really realize this true self, this true life that's being directly experienced here and now, and to live as this true life or true self. To live as we truly are is the essence of Buddhist practice. Our true life or true self is usually ignored or overlooked. It's usually ignored or overlooked by the fact that we're usually caught up in our one-sided ideas and views and opinions and beliefs. And we usually live our life based on these one-sided ideas and opinions and beliefs. And we act with egocentric intention. We ignore who we truly are and get caught up in the idea that we're a separate ego self. And so we act with egocentric intention to benefit the separate ego self we imagine ourselves to be. So this is how we ignore what we truly are. And this is very deeply rooted tendency for most of us. We usually ignore what we truly are. We ignore this directly experienced reality, which is our true life and the life of all beings. So our practice is to see and let go of how the true self is ignored and fully live as the true self. Our practice is to see when we're caught up in our one-sided ideas and beliefs and opinions, and when we're acting with egocentric intention. Our practice is to see when that's going on and allow that to drop away and to resume the practice of being aware here and now, being aware, living the awareness, the awakeness that is our true life. That our practice is to continually resume this practice of awareness and live as we truly are, rather than being caught up in our limited views and ideas and living our lives based on them, rather than living our life based on awareness and awakeness to a direct here now experience. So once again, our practice is to see and let go of how what we truly are is ignored, and to fully live as we truly are. What we truly are, the true self, can't be seen objectively or understood conceptually, but as I mentioned, it's directly experienced here and now, and everything is a manifestation of it. It can't be hidden. Buddha verified this in his awakening experience. And he tried to encourage people in a way of life that would enable them to realize it directly for themselves and to live their lives based on this awakening. So Buddha taught that all beings are interdependent, living inseparably from each other. So in our practice, we try to take care of all the seemingly separate beings without being taken in by the belief that they actually are separate beings. We try to take care of the beings that we meet. All beings we meet, we're all living inseparably from them. We try to take care of all the beings we meet, with whom we're living one inseparable life without being caught up in any ideas, even the idea of oneness. It's our attachment to ideas and beliefs is how we overlook the actual direct experience and overlook who we are and fail to live as we truly are. So everything we meet is our own life in the sense that we're living inseparably from it. Whatever we meet, we're living inseparably from it. And since we're inseparable from every being we meet, whatever being we meet, it becomes clear that to hurt others is to hurt ourselves, to help others is to help ourselves. And this realization of our inseparability from others is the basis of compassion. So Buddha offered some list of precepts these precepts help us to see when we're getting caught up in our limited views and acting with egocentric intention. These precepts are not commandments where you are told you have to not do this and don't do that. They're not commandments. These precepts are pointers to help us see when we're caught up in our limited, one-sided, egocentric views and acting based on them. The precepts are pointers to help us see when we are ignoring who we truly are and to help us resume the practice of living as we truly are. So precepts are not commandments. They help us to see when we're ignoring the wholeness, this reality of awareness, and awakeness, and wholeness and totality that is our true life and that is being directly experienced now. So these are not, once again, I want to emphasize, these are not commandments. These precepts, they're a list Buddha offered in the precepts, a list of activities that should be avoided. I'll read some of them. These activities are killing, stealing, lying, satisfying desires in a harmful way, slandering others, abusing others, being greedy, being boastful, overindulging in intoxicants, and harboring anger and ill will towards others. Buddha also encouraged the cultivation of the virtues of kindness, generosity, compassion, diligence, patience, equanimity, joyfulness, and fearlessness. These virtues naturally arise and develop as the Buddha way, the way of awakeness, is carried out. As the Buddha way, the way of awakeness is carried out, it becomes clearer and clearer that we're living inseparably from others. And this is clearly seen, these virtues begin to arise and develop. Another teaching that Buddha offered was the teaching of impermanence. Buddha taught that the reason there's so much suffering and confusion in the world is because we usually overlook or ignore our interdependence with others, and also we overlook the truth of impermanence. Nothing remains the same even for a moment. An actual direct experience, nothing separate or persistent can be found that could be grasped. This is usually ignored, and people usually live their lives trying to chase after and grasp ungraspable things and situations. This is how we create suffering for ourselves. We ignore how everything is constantly changing, and we chase after things, trying to grasp what can't be grasped, trying to take hold of things, thinking of them to be permanent and graspable when actually they are not. So, as I mentioned, Buddha encouraged his followers in the practice of awareness to here now experience. He encouraged his followers to live their lives based on awareness to direct here now experience, rather than living their lives based on their preconceived ideas and one-sided beliefs. Usually, we live our lives based on our preconceived ideas and beliefs. And we overlook the actual direct experience. And we ignore who we truly are in this way. So when people first start out in this practice of awareness, they usually think that the practice is I, separate ego, self, me, should do something in particular call being aware or awake. But eventually it becomes evident that our practice is to be the awareness or awakeness that is what we truly are. Strictly speaking, we can't find some separate ego self who's carrying out this practice. But eventually in carrying out this practice, it can be realized that awareness or awakeness is what we truly are, and that our practice is to try and fully live this awareness or awakeness that is our true life and the life of all beings. And in realizing this and in helping and practicing in this way, we can help all beings. And in helping all beings, we can help all beings to help us, which helps us to help all beings, which helps all beings to help us. This practicing and living this reality of awareness, which is our true life, helps us to function together and mutually assist ourselves and all beings. It's a great practice that in which all beings are mutually benefiting each other. Eventually, this becomes clear. So Buddha taught in many ways. He tried to help each being that he met, tried to help them appropriately. And some beings he'd have to help differently than others. So in his teachings, he would try to adjust his teachings to fit the needs and the capabilities of the person or people that he was encountering at that moment, at that time. And I'll give a couple of examples of these. One of these was the story about one of his monks named Sona. And Sona was a person who, before he became a monk, had been a very skillful lute player. And the lute is a instrument, sort of like a harp, a stringed instrument, a little bit like a harp. And Sona had been a very skillful lute player. Once Sona became a monk, he tried to practice in a way that would enable him to speed up his enlightenment experience. He wanted to try and get his enlightenment experience as quickly as possible. So he practiced with excessive diligence. He would try to make things hard on himself, try sort of carrying out the asceticism type practice that had been rejected by the Buddha earlier. He was trying very hard, and he would make things difficult on himself, and he was having a really rough time with his practice. And Sona one day was thinking about how things had been going for him, and he realized he hadn't made much progress, even though he'd been trying very hard to make progress. And so he was thinking about quitting. He was thinking about quitting life as a monk and going back to being a professional lute player as he had been before. But Buddha, one time when Sona was thinking this, Buddha could tell this was on his mind. And Buddha said to him, Sona, you were thinking about quitting being a monk and going back to being a professional lute player. And Sona said, yes, I was. And Sona said, well, I've been trying so hard and I haven't made any progress. I think I'm just going to quit. And then Buddha said, well, you used to be a professional lute player. Tell me, when the strings of the lute are tuned too tightly, does the lute make a good sound? And Sona said, no, the strings of the lute do not make a good sound. And then Buddha said, when the strings of the lute are tuned too loosely, does the lute make a good sound? And Sona said, no, when the strings of the lute are tuned too loosely, the lute does not make a good sound. And Sona said, only when the strings of the lute are tuned just right does the lute make a good sound. And then the Buddha said, in the same way, Sona, your practice must be just right. Your practice must be in tune with here now experience. You must live your life based on here now experience, tuning yourself into that, and letting go of your ideas about making quick progress, letting go of the ideas about making your life difficult to speed up your progress, letting go of ideas about taking it easy, letting go of all your ideas and just plunging into living wholeheartedly, being aware of direct wholehearted experience and living your life based on being aware of your now experience. This is a life that is just right. That is the way you should practice. And Sona, upon hearing these words from the Buddha, was deeply impressed and was able to return to his life as a monk and practice without gaining ideas and egocentric expectations and erroneous ideas about what practice was. So he was very helpful to Sona. He adjusted his teachings exactly to what Sona needed to hear at that particular time. There's another famous story about Buddha and his encounter with the lady named Kisa Gotami. And Kisa Gotami was a lady whose baby had died. And she was so saddened by this that she was driven temporarily insane with grief. And she was, because of her temporary insanity, she was not able to acknowledge that her baby had died. And she would carry her dead baby around, and she would ask people for medicine for her baby. And people would say, your baby is dead. Your baby doesn't need medicine. You need to bury your baby. But Kisa Gotami said, no, my baby needs medicine. I want to bring my baby to health. Can you help me? But people would say, no, I can't help you. Your baby is dead. And but finally, somebody suggested that she go see the Buddha. And when she told the Buddha about this situation of her baby being dead and asked for medicine, Buddha said, go to a house in the village where no one has died ever. And from that house, collect some mustard seeds. So this, he gave her something to do. He gave her an activity to be involved in. He gave her an activity where she could work off the insane, crazy energy that she had and work off the deep grief that she had. So Kisa Gotami went from house to house asking, has anybody died at this house? And but at every house she went to, someone had died. And so she was unable to get mustard seeds from any house, because at every house someone had died at some time. So eventually Kisa Gotami was able to let go of her temporary insanity, and Buddha had helped her very much. He gave her an activity to plunge into, to really enable her to work off this temporary insanity, and also to help her realize the universality of death. And finally, as a result of this, Kisa Gotami was able to accept the death of her baby, and she buried her baby. So after this experience, Kisa Gotami felt a deep sense of gratitude to the Buddha, and she greatly appreciated how he had helped her. And eventually, a short while later, she became one of Buddha's nuns. So these are two different stories that give examples of how the Buddha was able to help people by providing them teaching that was specifically related to their situation, and being able to help them greatly by doing so. The Buddha also encouraged questioning. He didn't want people just to believe him because he was the Buddha. He wanted people to question him. He didn't tell people, believe it because I say so. He said he would encourage people to ask questions. He didn't want people to blindly accept what he told them. He said, don't immediately accept what I say, and don't immediately reject what I say. Just listen, and just let it sit for a while to see if it's right for you. He didn't want people to blindly follow him. He wanted people to reflect deeply on the teachings that he offered and to ask questions. He wanted people to arrive on their own at their decision to follow him. He didn't want people to grasp the ideas that he used or he would present his teachings. Strictly speaking, we can't say exactly what truth is, or what reality is, or what this way of life is. We can't exactly say. It's very difficult to put it into words. So Buddha didn't want the people he taught to grasp at the words he was using. He wanted people to see the words he was using as pointers that could suggest ways to go, and pointers that could give people suggestions that would help them in directly realizing the truth and what this way of life is. So so some of the teachings that Buddha offered were subtle, and so sometimes it's when you hear something you don't understand, sometimes it's best just to ask questions and let it reflect on it a while, and let it sit for a while, let it percolate for a little while, and don't immediately accept or reject something because it doesn't coincide with your the ideas that you have now. But sometimes you need to reflect for a while on what it is that's being said in Buddha's teaching. Don't be too ready to accept it. Yes, I believe it, or too ready to reject it. No, I don't believe it. Just let it sit for a while. Let it percolate. Let it see if it's right for you. The way of life, the Buddha pointed out, was not about making gains or improvement. Ultimately, sometimes he would speak in a way that implied that people could make gains, and sometimes people thought that his enlightenment, his experience, was something that he gained. But ultimately, this way of life is not about making gains and improvements. This way of life is about realizing what we are and living as we are. It's not about trying to get something that we're lacking, or improving and getting something that we think would be beneficial for us. And just don't worry too much about gain or improvement. Mainly just try and practice being aware here and now for the sake of being aware here and now. See the teachings that are offered as pointers that might help you directly realize what this way of life is and help you realize directly the truth. But ultimately, it's not about gain or improvement. As Katagiri Roshi, Tejo's and my teacher, used to say, you are Buddha. All beings are Buddha. Our true nature is the Buddha nature. In this sense, we are Buddha. All beings are Buddha. It's not something we have to try to become, something better than what we are already. We just need to realize what we are and live as we are. As Tejo, I know, remembers, at the last lecture Katagiri Roshi gave, he over and over again, he would say, you are Buddha, you are Buddha. He's pointing to this reality, which is our true life, our true self, our true nature. He's not trying to give us an idea to grasp. He's pointing to this reality that must be directly experienced and directly lived. Well, many people became Buddha's followers because he had so deeply realized his interdependence with others. He had a very peaceful and kind-hearted presence. It was because he realized that he was inseparable from others, interdependent with others. He had a very peaceful and kind-hearted presence. He realized everything he met was his own life. And so in the people and things and individuals that he met, he was very kind-hearted and compassionate. And others could feel his peacefulness and compassion and were drawn to him. This was true even of wild animals, and the serial killer was one time was very much impressed by the deep feeling of compassion that he got from Buddha. And these vicious animals, in one case a very vicious snake, in another case an elephant, they felt this peacefulness and kindness from Buddha, and they didn't attack him. And Angulimala didn't attack him either, even though he had initially tried to. But because of this deep peacefulness and compassion that Buddha had, people were drawn to him and were deeply responded to him in a positive way. Also, Buddha spoke very skillfully, and he saw clearly, so people were very much wanted to follow his teachings. And after his death, at the age of 80, the teachings spread throughout Asia. And in recent years, last couple hundred years, teaching has been spreading around the world. And it's now spread to pretty much all over the world. There are many, many different parts of the world that have Buddhist centers now. So anyway, let's see what time it is. I guess I should stop about now and see if you have any questions or any comments, or anything you want to ask or anything you'd like to say.